Russia, heads of state from more than 20 countries attended the Grand Military Parade on the occasion of the 80th anniversary of the victory of the Soviet Union over Nazi Germany in the Great Patriotic War. Pope Leo XIV officiated the first Mass of his pontificate in the Sistine Chapel in front of all cardinals. And Chilean authorities confirmed the death of 6 individuals aboard an ambulance plane that disappeared on Wednesday night as it left the country's northern region from the capital. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Beren de los Santos. I'm from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. On the morning of May 9th, the Victory Parade was held in Moscow to commemorate the victory of the Red Army over Nazi Germany and the end of World War II. The event began after the arrival of President Vladimir Putin and other heads of state. Before the parade began, President Putin addressed the Russian people with a speech paying tribute to the history and sacrifice of the Soviet Red Army soldiers on the battlefields. After this, in honor of the fallen Soviet soldiers, a minute of silence was made. Military troops from various countries took part in the parade, followed by several units of the legendary T-34 tank, a symbol of Soviet victory. The parade finished with the offering of a floral wreath to the fallen Soviet soldiers by President Vladimir Putin.
Russia
has been and will remain an indestructible barrier against Nazism, Russophobia and anti-Semitism. It will fight against the atrocities committed by the proponents of these aggressive and destructive ideas. Truth and justice are on our side. The whole country, society, people, support the participants of the special military operation. We are proud of their bravery and determination, of the fortitude that has always brought us only victory.
After witnessing the military parade on the Red Square, Russian President Vladimir Putin, accompanied by the leaders of China and Venezuela, honored the memory of the fallen combatants with a minute of silence and a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier. The Kremlin Honor Guard also laid wreath on the Avenue of Heroic Cities. One of the most emblematic places of the Russian capital is precisely the tomb of the unknown soldier that is located next to the Kremlin wall in the Alexander Garden. The Square of the Revolution in Managua, capital of Nicaragua, was the scene of a solemn commemoration of the 80th anniversary of the victory over fascism. The event marked the surrender of Nazi Germany in 1945 at the end of the Second World War and paid homage to the heroes, particularly to the soldiers of the Soviet Red Army whose sacrifice was decisive in the defeat of Hitler's fascism. The square was illuminated in red, symbolizing the flag of the Red Army, and welcomed Nicaraguan authorities, citizens, and international representatives, including Russian Ambassador Tatiana Dorojova. The ceremony highlighted the historical resistance, the solidarity among peoples, and the commitment to peace in the face of the threats of neo-fascism. And according to Russian Defense Ministry, the Ukrainian forces have committed at least 488 violations during the ceasefire. The Russian armed forces pointed out that Ukraine has not strictly respected the ceasefire, which includes the absence of air, missile, or artillery attacks in the framework of the celebration of the 80th anniversary of Victory Day. In this sense, Defense Ministry emphasized that Kiev's decisive destructive actions against Moscow reaffirm its intention to avoid a peaceful resolution to the conflict. In addition, the agency reported that Russian air defense forces destroyed 182 drones and dozens of missiles in the last 24 hours. And now we have a short break coming up. But first, remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South, and we continue analyzing the importance of the Victory Day celebrations underway in Moscow and also around the world 80 years after the Soviet win over the Nazi regime in 1945. And for that, we are joined now by international law expert Yvonne Diaz. Hello, Yvonne. Thank you so much for joining us in From the South. I would like to start our interview by asking you, what do you think is the most important thing to keep in mind regarding this 80th anniversary of that important win?
Hello, Velen. Thank you for having me. Okay, I believe that the most important thing about this 80 year definitely is the change in the whole world orders, in the whole world order and the whole international system. And I am talking about the prohibition of the use of the force, the beginning of the human rights international system, legal system, the endorsement of all the legal and the international legal regime that persists today that we have, and what has drawn the international system that we have today, that of course it is under a new redefinition. That's what we have been facing, I think, on the last 10 years probably. But we are talking about the new world order and how it has, and how it rearranged, how it reorganized itself after the Second World War, and how it like stated the pillars of the world system that we have today. I'm talking about multipolarity, I'm talking about multilateralism, international organizations and the entrance of other international actors, and definitely how international law is drawn today belongs definitely to the reorganization that the post-Second World War brought.
So, Yvonne, we were talking about that important international presence, right? The presence of many leaders of the Global South, for example. How do you think, do we need to understand the presence of such important leaders? We've seen not only Latin American leaders such as Nicolás Maduro, Miguel Díaz-Canel, but also Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva, Chinese President Xi Jinping, a very important presence for this day in Moscow. What does that mean in this global context?
I think that we have to see it from the perspective of this global engagement, I will say, and that is regarding the non-Western states, basically, because I think this reinforces the Russians' central narrative, and that is that the world is not unipolar. And maybe what we can see is that some of the Western efforts to isolate Russia have not entirely succeeded. And I think this is that means this international architecture regarding security and regarding the complexity of international relations show that Russia is not willing to accept a subordinate role in a Western-led global order. And I think that what Russia's here is calling, and the presence of this global leaders, global South leaders, basically, it's calling for a multipolar world. I think a more balanced system where power is distributed between several centers and regional actors, and that can assert themselves without just the belonging of to the traditional organizations such as NATO or such as the group of the U.S. allies.
So, Yvonne, I would like to ask you, you were talking before about the importance of that 1945 win in terms of building a world with no war, no conflict, or stopping the use of force at that time. So, and we live in a context right now in which we have many cases of ongoing conflicts and ongoing genocide in Palestine, for example, promoted by imperialism. Do you think that this multipolar world order or this show of strength is going to build a way for a more peaceful world?
Okay, there is something that has to be taken into account. What we did in the 1945 win and what the Charter of the United Nations stated at that time was that the use of force was definitely not accepted and that states were under the obligation to solve their controversies in a pacific way. And that was due, of course, to the two world wars that the world had faced at that moment, and the decision not to follow the same path. However, what we did and the international legal order came along with this political decision, reinstating the fact that the use of force is prohibited. But if there is a restore to the use of force, I mean, because conflict cannot be, even if war is forbidden, conflict cannot be just I forget the word, but we cannot avoid conflict. That's what I'm trying to say. So, in this sense, what the international legal order has tried to do is to state the rules not to go to war, and in case we have to face war, then we have the rules of war and saying, okay, if we go in and we are amongst a conflict, then we have to follow some rules because this has to be followed up by a pacific or at least a judicial, but trying to be in a very civilized way to solve international conflicts. So, but however, this system that we built 80 years ago has come to redefinitions. Actors have changed. The usual actors that we had before, and just this kind of bipolarity that we had between the Soviet Union and the United States after this new trend have changed. We have new global leaders. We have new actors, as I was saying before. So I think that we are not definitely heading. I cannot say that we are heading to a more pacific or a more stable world regarding peace. However, what we are facing is a redefinition of the whole entire system. Maybe we're looking at that the rules that we placed 80 years ago maybe are not the ones that we have to follow. And I'm not saying that we have to restore to war, but what I'm saying is that maybe we have to change the way that the world was just brought along with just a unipolar system, with a unique leader, with a unique hegemonic system, and just a bunch of followers. What we're seeing is that we have to see power distributed along the different positions, the different forces that the world has. And maybe that's what we are seeing right now regarding this union of these global leaders. And also we're seeing also maybe that there's this comes along like with a greater agency and autonomy regarding the shaping of the regional and global affairs as well, because we're seeing how these new groups and these new trends try to redefine themselves and show themselves a little bit stronger than the unique forms that we used to see 20 years ago or 50 years ago.
Excellent, Yvonne. I'm so grateful for having your opinion to really understand the importance of those images of what is happening today in Moscow and also around the world. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Valen, for the invitation. Always a pleasure.
That was Yvonne Tellez, international law expert from the South, here analyzing the 80th anniversary of the historical win between the Red Army against Nazi regime in 1945. And now we have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverages, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Pope Leo XIV officiated the first Mass of his pontificate in the Sistine Chapel in front of all cardinals, the 133 ones who had been on the conclave and those older than 80 years old who were in Rome. At 9 minutes past 11 local time, the first pope born in the U.S. but with Peruvian nationality too, Robert Francis Prevost, entered the Sistine Chapel dressed in white with the mitre and crosier. As part of his agenda, next Sunday at noon, the new Bishop of Rome will pray the Regina Coeli prayer from the central loggia of the Basilica of St. Peter's. Meanwhile, he will meet on Monday in the Paul VI Hall with all the media workers accredited to the press office of the Holy See who have covered the events in the past weeks. Meanwhile, in Peru, the Bishop of Callao, Luis Alberto Barrera, showed the seat of the archbishopric where Pope Leo XIV lived and worked. Barrera made a tour of the archdiocese, recalling all the times that the current and recently elected Pope has lived in Peru. Among other things, he showed a series of pictures showing the late Pope Francis and the current pontiff. He said that he was a good man, and even with the bad guys, was what he said about Prevost, Bishop of Callao, the port near Lima. Prevost, 69 years old and a native of the United States, arrived in Peru for the first time 4 decades ago and received Peruvian citizenship. And we go now to Chile as authorities confirmed the death of 6 individuals aboard an ambulance plane that disappeared on Wednesday night as it left the country's northern region from the capital. Gonzalo Duran, presidential spokesman for the metropolitan region, confirmed the death of the 6 passengers of the aircraft that went down in Curacaví after identifying the wreckage of the plane during an aerial operation led by the Chilean Air Force. In addition, the Air Force reported that the aircraft was detected by the crew of an MH-60M Black Hawk helicopter belonging to Aviation Group Number 9 in the Curacaví area near Lepe at 15:50 local time. In this scenario, the prosecutor in charge of the investigation stated that the circumstances that caused the accident will be determined at the moment the relevant data is known. In Panama, different social sectors and workers reinforce their work stoppage in rejection of the neoliberal policies of President José Raúl Mulino. These sectors, including teachers and construction workers, began their 3rd week of general strike in opposition to Law 462, which modifies the pension system, the reactivation of mining, and the attacks on national sovereignty. Meanwhile, the state continues to repress the demonstrations under the pretext of keeping the streets clear and allowing the flow of vehicles. However, the social sectors demand an open dialogue and the repeal of this law in order to carry out an integral reform of the Social Security Fund with a strategy of solidarity and collective good. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also on TikTok. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.